Hey everyone, we're back here on Keto and Crime with day 24. That is Monday, May 8th, the beginning of week 5 of the Vallow trial. As you recall, in our previous video, we went over day 23, in which was only a half day on Friday of last week. And at the end of the day, they were basically FBI Special Agent Doug Hart was going over many of the documents found in the 𝗚𝗨𝘀 iCloud accounts, and there was a lot of argument from the defense about the fact that this was created for another witness and that he's only doing hearsay by repeating what the other witness says. And in the end, the judge ruled that he could use the exhibit if it was admitted specifically to his expertise, and that was done. But as we pick up on Monday, the defense is still arguing the same point, saying that the prosecution is only picking and choosing what's important. Really, Archibald? Really? The defense, I mean, the prosecution's only going to pick what's important. That's called evidence, dear. You're as stupid as your client. Part of this is the famous romance novel that was written by Chad about he and Lori. You can find my summary of that disgusting story right up there. And basically, still a lot of argument. Basically, in the end, Judge Boyce says that he will allow the amended exhibit, and if the objections are noted, and if there's any kerfuffle, he will rule on that later. So Doug Hart is back on the stand. As you recall, he has done over 20 to 30 missing child cases. He worked on a Native American reservation. He has had special training with the 𝗏𝗏𝗏s unit, which is a child abduction rapid response unit. And so he is uniquely qualified to handle cases like this. And so they began with more evidence from the iCloud account, basically a lot of text messages and stuff from Lori to Chad, Chad to Lori, about how they miss each other, lots of kissy heart emojis. Then we get to a text about Lori complaining to Chad about how she got the letter from Charles Vallow's insurance company saying she was no longer the beneficiary, and then speculating on who would be the beneficiary, basically complaining he left nothing for JJ. He says she speculates it could be it could be Brandon, it could be Kay. She says that she'll try to get on his computer and see who he changed it to. But yeah, she's angry about that money, and that she will basically get into his computer and figure out what happened. And then in a later text message, it shows that yes, it was indeed Kay was changed to the beneficiary on the life insurance, but she'll still get $4,000 a month in spousal support from Social Security off of Charles. And then there's text messages describing certain people on the light-dark scale, and talking about, I hesitate to use the word exercise, but it seems that they were looking to exorcise JJ. They talked about how close they were to death, at least from their human life, because of these evil spirits, and just a lot of, shenanigans. Then we move on to them having the same conversation about Melanie and Brandon Boudreaux's children. And Brandon himself. So thank whatever God you worship that Brandon got those children away from Melanie, because it could have went really bad. I think these people were bent, like I said, I think these people were bent on getting rid of anybody that did not strictly agree with them. And then there was discussion about how dark and an evil spirit that inhabited Kay Woodcock. And bear in mind, the Woodcocks are in the courtroom listening to all this crap. Anyway, there were text messages from July in which Lori is describing JJ's behavior as strange, and Chad is asking her such macabre things. Is it still JJ? There's also discussion about Brighton Boudreaux, which is one of Melanie and Brandon's children, about are they still themselves. So we're basically edging ever closer to the time that we think the children were killed. Then there's discussion about Tammy and her being not Tammy as we get closer and closer to September. This is in August. There's discussion of Tammy's, mission beyond the veil, and she's also dark. Now, is it Viola, or is it that she has a mission beyond the veil, and that's the reason you're going to kill her? I'm pulling no bones. I hate these people, and I want them to go down. But anyway, so it's just very, very confusing. It's almost like we're reading A Descent into Madness. This could be an Edgar Allan Poe novel. We're reading not only Descent into Madness, but kind of a way that they're justifying in their own heads the evil acts that they're about to commit. That's what I take away. Then there's some text where Chad is talking about seeing his grandpa Keith and how Grandpa Keith is protecting them. Again, if you want to know Chad Daybell's life story, I reviewed his autobiography. Take it with a grain of salt. And basically just more and more macabre as we get closer and closer to September. And it is when we are in the realm of texts and messages from September, when their support for each other is obvious. I mean, they have a very loving relationship, whatever you want to say. It's here that Agent Hart does offer an opinion and says that he believes that their relationship was the primary driver behind all these crimes. Not a real belief in any of this stuff, though that was part of it, but just so they could be together with no obstacles. As you recall, text messages shown on Friday described the children as obstacles. And then there's more discussion about zombies. They use the letter Z for zombies, and it's just getting, more and more macabre. And then we go into videos that were stored on the Loury for Style, and we see the famous Yellowstone picture in which all four of them are present. That is Alex, Loury, JJ, and Tylee. After lunch, there's more discussion about what parts of this whole exhibit can be admitted, specifically the romance novel, and Boyce says he will allow it to be admitted, but won't allow the whole story to be read to the jury. He said even though it's fantasy, it does show the level of commitment that these two had to each other, and it could, it definitely sheds light on their mentality around this. And at this point, after that is ruled, the jury is brought back in. So basically, they go into the text messages from Sidney Woodbury. Remember, she testified earlier in the trial about babysitting JJ. And then we start going over more and more texts between Chad and Loury. I love you, blah, 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 the romance novel. And then we get into September 22nd. There was a short video, 3 to 4 seconds, that showed JJ alive on September 22nd. And then, of course, as we know, that's when he disappeared. And then the text between Sidney and Loury on the 24th, and where she told Loury that he had gone to live with the Woodcocks for a while. And then basically on October 3rd, more sweet text between Chad and Loury. And then on October 5th, he texts her something about big news about Tammy. And then where they talk about Viola entering Tammy's body, and he even accused her sister Samantha of expediting that, like Samantha wanted to possess her own sister. And then there's more about movements. They talk about Brandon and Melanie splitting, their divorce, just lots of different stuff going on. You can see frustration starting to build here. And then on October 19th, which is the day that Melanie died, there's text messages between Melanie and Loury, where Melanie tells her that Tammy died from the coughing spell. And then Chad texts Loury saying, "No fun here without you. Can you call me?" Now, his wife just died. So, yeah. And then he talks about how he's missing her desperately and wants to be with her. And then by the end of October, they're talking about, Alex. They're talking about money, how to move things around. And then they get into more specifics about the investigation. And at this point, Rachel Smith tenders the witness, and John Thomas cross-examines. He begins by asking Hart about the patriarchal blessing, that part of that was represented in these documents. And Hart just basically says he doesn't know much about the blessings from a religious standpoint, but they did exist. And it was in the evidence. And Hart says there were, and then Thomas asks about other texts that the jury may not have seen, because this was culled down from a lot of documents. And Hart does concede that there was a lot of normal type mom stuff on there that any mom would say. So it wasn't like she was just constantly talking bad about her children, stuff like that. There was normal mom stuff on there as well. And they talk about a religious singer that Lori may or may not have had a crush on, and then he asks references to other people that Lori may have known that were on 0 on the light and dark scale. Hart is not speculating anything. He's going directly from the evidence. Thomas's final question is getting Hart to answer the question, did Chad Daybell manipulate people? And Hart says, yes, he did manipulate people, including Lori. And at this point, Thomas has no more questions. Smith redirects with one question. If Lori ever manipulated Chad or others, Hart says yes. And then she rests and tenders the witness, and at this point, day 24 is dismissed, and now let's go into day 25. Day 25, which was Tuesday, May 9th, gets underway with Hedman. She was an investigator that was called just before they recessed the day before, and they are basically here talking about the James and Elena romance novel, again, right up there. And so basically they spend a good hour going over this thing, pulling out specific parts. And in the end, basically, the prosecution tenders the witness, and Thomas says he has no further questions. And then they spend another good hour arguing about the admittance. As I said the day before, it was ruled that the prosecution would be able to present the entire novel to the jury, but that they would not be able to read the entire thing. So more and more arguments about that. Once she steps down, the prosecution calls Attorney General Investigator Nick Edwards, and he is currently deployed with the United States Army. He does work with the Idaho Attorney General's office when he's not on active deployment. He has worked there since 2019, and before that he worked at the Pocatello Police Department. He describes his training, background, and law enforcement experience. He said that the Attorney General's office was asked to assist with the investigation of Tammy Daybell's death in April after she was exhumed, and that is when he became involved. He learned all about Tammy's background as a result of his investigation. Text messages projected at this time, which shows Chad and Lori's, calling each other their names from the romance novel, and then they talk about the attempted shooting of Tammy on October 9th. And then we see some text messages between Alex, Chad, Zulema, and Lori around the time of the attempted shooting of Tammy. Now, this goes hand in hand with the GPS movements that were on Alex Cox's phone at the time as well. Then we go into a timeline that Edwards created for October 9th. The defense objects to it, but it is allowed. And it basically takes us through what we've already seen via the GPS trackers as what happened the day that she was shot at. And then there's more discussion about Tammy Daybell's life insurance. We've already seen this. Now, like I said, I know this is a big rehash of what we already heard, but these are different departments investigating it. And I think what the prosecution is trying to do here is show that the evidence doesn't lie, that these things happened. It's not just subjection, it's purely objective. And so they're trying to show that, yes, Alex Cox was in the area. It's confirmed by GPS and text. And now all the events from every single law enforcement agency that investigated this thing show the same timeline. That's what they're trying to establish here. Basically, the defense has no cross-examination questions for him, but There is one final redirect from the prosecution. They ask him about the misfire, the rifle that looked like a paintball gun but really wasn't. Basically, what the defense is trying to establish, what the prosecution is trying to establish, is that it was not a paintball gun. It was an actual rifle. He was there to kill her, and it jammed, and that's the reason it made the loud sound, but nothing came out. And Edwards does confer that if the rifle had jammed, then it would have made that noise. So they're trying to establish it wasn't a paintball gun, it was an actual rifle. After lunch, there's more discussion about a potential clerical error in the original indictment that they want corrected. There's some other minor administrative things going on. And finally, around 1:35 p.m. local time, the state rests. And then the defense asked that the jury be taken out because he would like to make a motion not in the presence of the jury, and the jury is asked to leave at that time. And at that time, they talk about Rule 29, more time to review evidence. Basically, what Archibald's trying to do is use Rule 29, which says that he wants the judge to review all the evidence that has just been presented by the prosecution and determine each count on Lourie Vallow, each of the 4 counts on Lourie Vallow, if there's enough evidence to even proceed with the trial. He's moving for a judgment of acquittal on an administrative thing. So at that point, they move everyone out of the courtroom, and Boyce and the defense team are talking about this motion while Boyce reviews all of the evidence and his notes to see if the trial can even proceed. This is just lawyer shenanigans. So basically, Boyce decided that, yes, there was enough evidence to proceed, and he tells the defense, after everyone's brought back in, that they can proceed with their own case. Basically, the defense rests, will present no witnesses. They said they do not believe the prosecution has proven their case. Boyce does take the time to ask Lourie if she is using her Fifth Amendment rights to waive her testimony, and she confirms yes. So basically, both sides have rested, and we will be convening again. Court is adjourned until Thursday. And so there will be no court on Wednesday, the 10th, which is today, if you're watching this as soon as it's released. And Thursday will be closing arguments, and then they will go to the jury. There will be people at the court today, but it's going to be mainly administrative, instructions, all that good stuff. So we are at the end. The defense is not mounting much of a defense. I mean, they only have to put up one reasonable doubt, and they're standing on the laurels that all of this evidence is contradictory, blah, 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 blah. But having read and listened to every piece of evidence, I think the prosecution definitely proved its case, at least beyond a reasonable doubt. And so anyway, I will be back with you as soon as closing arguments wrap, and then we will, we'll talk about it, and then hopefully the verdict will happen very, very soon. Boyce did rule that the verdict will be live streamed, so we will be able to see the verdict handed down and Laurie's reaction to that verdict. So that is a good thing. So until next time, let me know what you think about this trial, and I'll be back as soon as there's more to talk about. Until next time, you don't cry.